You drove reckless, Mr.
Officer, calm down with your words. I know my rights. I wasn't driving
I'm
over
telling you, you were a reckless driver and you almost knocked someone down the road.
What are you talking about? Run the playback on your cam because you're the one who almost took my life.
You need to come with us to the station. Hey, don't touch me like that. Turn around
You
and...
put hands on him again and you're in violation. I'm his attorney, officer.
You're a lawyer?
A licensed lawyer.
Yes.
And if you arrest him without probable cause, I will file suit before the day's out. You understand?
All right.
Mateo George and his wife Carly George were on their way back home from a long day. Mateo, a successful businessman, had spent hours at his office managing operations and strategizing the growth of his company. Carly, a sharp and dedicated lawyer, had just wrapped up a case defending a client wrongly accused of a crime. They were looking forward to returning to their peaceful home, a sanctuary filled with the laughter of their 2 children. The sun had started to dip low, casting a warm glow across the empty highway. The long, winding road was familiar to them, a route they took almost every day to get home. Mateo drove slowly, carefully. He always made sure to abide by the speed limit and obey the rules of the road. Carly sat beside him, reviewing case files for her next court appearance, while the kids were already getting ready for bed, their faces illuminated by the soft light of their tablet screens in the back seat. It was just a typical evening until the sound of a siren cut through the air, the red and blue lights flashing in their rearview mirror. Mateo's heart sank. He wasn't unfamiliar with these moments, though. Growing up in a world where his skin color always seemed to attract unwanted attention, he had learned to stay calm and collected when stopped by law enforcement. However, his experiences, each more harrowing than the last, left him uneasy. Even though he was a successful entrepreneur now, the scars of past injustices lingered. "Mateo," Carly said quietly, her voice steady, "don't worry, I've got this." Mateo nodded, taking a deep breath and pulling over to the side of the road. As he did, he noticed the officer's cruiser pull up behind them, the 2 uniformed men stepping out. One of the cops had an expression that seemed anything but friendly. Carly, ever the professional, was already straightening her posture, her eyes sharp and calculating. The taller officer approached the driver's side, his boots crunching on the gravel. "Good evening, sir. We stopped you because of your driving. You were swerving all over the road." Mateo was taken aback. "I was driving just fine, officer," he said, his voice measured. "I've been on this road for years, and I always follow the rules." The officer ignored his response and motioned for the other officer to walk up to the passenger side of the vehicle. That officer's gaze settled on Carly, who was quietly observing everything, the files in her hands now resting on her lap. "Ma'am, you were both swerving. You should know better," the second officer chimed in. Mateo opened his mouth to respond, but Carly stopped him with a glance. She knew the routine all too well. She had seen these types of interactions time and time again, especially in the communities where systemic racism ran deep. But Carly wasn't just any woman. She was a lawyer who had dedicated her life to fighting against the very injustice they were facing. "Officer," Carly said, her tone calm but firm, "my husband wasn't swerving. We're heading home from a long day, and you're accusing us of something that didn't happen. I'd like to know the reason for this stop and why you're accusing us of rough driving when there's no evidence to support it." The officer on Carly's side shifted uncomfortably, unsure of how to respond to someone so well versed in the law. The taller officer, however, pushed forward. "You don't need to question our authority, ma'am," he said dismissively. "This is a standard traffic stop. Now, I'm going to issue a citation for reckless driving, and you'll pay the fine just like everyone else." Carly didn't flinch. She had seen this before. She had seen how people who looked like her and Mateo were often targeted, how the color of their skin became an excuse for law enforcement to push their own agenda, to force them into situations where they felt powerless, often leading to costly fines or worse, an arrest. She had seen the systemic abuse of power that many in her community had faced, but tonight she wasn't going to let that happen to them. "Actually, officer," she said, her voice growing more authoritative, "you're not going to issue a citation for something that didn't happen. We have dashcam footage, and I'd be happy to provide you with the details of that. I also know the law regarding unlawful stops based on racial profiling, and I will not tolerate any form of harassment, especially for something as trivial as this." There was a brief, tense silence. The officers exchanged a glance, their facade of confidence faltering slightly. Mateo, although silent, could feel the weight of Carly's words. He had seen it all before, but hearing her speak with such resolve made him proud and gave him a sense of security he hadn't realized he needed. The taller officer hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. He mumbled something under his breath and walked back to his cruiser. His partner lingered, still eyeing Carly and Mateo suspiciously, but said nothing more. Moments later, the officer returned to the vehicle. "We're letting you go with a warning, this time." Carly gave a small nod, not allowing herself to show the relief she was feeling. "Thank you, officer," she said, her voice still calm. "But next time, I expect a legitimate reason for the stop and no further harassment based on our skin color." As the officers turned and walked back to their cruiser, Carly looked at Mateo and smiled softly. "You're safe. Don't let these people make you feel small." Mateo smiled, a weight lifted off his shoulders. He had experienced his share of run-ins with law enforcement, but tonight he saw how powerful it was when the law worked in your favor, when you had someone who knew how to fight for what was right. As the car started moving again, Mateo reflected on the ordeal. He had been a young man once, navigating a world that often tried to break him down simply because of the color of his skin. He had watched friends and family fall victim to the unfairness of the system, sometimes with no one there to help them. But tonight, he had seen the difference one person could make, the difference that knowledge of the law, courage, and standing up for your rights could bring. And Carly had done just that. They drove home quietly, the soft hum of the engine accompanying them, but Mateo couldn't shake the truth that lingered in his mind. America still had a long way to go when it came to racial equality. The country needed to face its demons, the ones that led to the targeting of black men and women, and actively work to change the systems that allowed these injustices to persist. Carly's words echoed in his mind. "Don't let them make you feel small." They weren't just words to him, they were a reminder of the fight that still needed to be fought, not just for themselves, but for everyone who had ever been made to feel less than because of their skin color. The world needed to change. Racism had no place in America, and they would keep fighting until that change came.